Janet, number 7.
My number 7 is And Roger.
That
I
hit,
have a reason it's not on my list. I have a reason it's not on my list.
it hit the. You know, this could be, if we were gonna do honorable mentions, this one would have been an honorable mention. It just slipped from the list.
Yeah, I think it's like a pretty strong narrative game. So it is in the mechanical vein of Florence, if people have played that, which is to say that it is fairly like kind of minimalistic art style, like heavy on like line work kind of drawings, that has an emphasis on color to draw your eye. And you kind of have these series of kind of mini game experiences. You know, a simple example might be you stir the soup and you're keeping like the ring in a certain space. And once you like have finished stirring, that task is complete and you move on to your next task. What is intriguing about And Roger from like a mechanical perspective, which, you know, in a narrative game like this, they're so closely tied together, is that they use, they want to create confusion in the player, because a big part of this game is kind of figuring out who are you in this story and who are you in relation to the other characters. And they sort of start you off in a very disoriented, like, first chapter, and then they kind of like take you to another spot narratively, and then you sort of start to realize, okay, now this is how all these dots connect. But in order to create confusion, they do really fun things with the gameplay. So it might be you'll be asked, what time is it? And you look at the clock in game and you're like, it's like blurred or like obfuscated in a weird way, and you're trying to answer and you keep like getting it wrong. They'll have things like press the button, and then you press it, and then they end up putting like what feels like a million buttons on the screen, and you're like manically pressing all of them at once, trying to like create, you know, progress. And they use all of that to add confusion for the player, sometimes fear, sometimes like a sense of urgency. Sometimes it's just very early on, like in the first chapter, there's a moment where you need to make a phone call, and you like, I ended up getting so engrossed in the mini game task of it that then when someone approached me like from behind my shoulder, I was like horrified in the game. Like that was like, I was like jump scared because I was so engrossed in just the task I was doing. Admittedly, like when I played In Roger, I wasn't sure like, will this end up on my list? Will it not? I think it's a cool narrative game. I'm actually not as like gaga over it as I think a lot of people who do have this on their top 10 list speak, I think, more like feverishly about how cool it is. I think for me, and this is like a weird take, but maybe it's the take that's popular in this group, I was more intrigued from that first episode where it was like a kind of darker storyline, you know, that was gesturing towards like an element of like potential abuse or like a scary moment, you know, where they kind of present you playing as a child and what's going on, because mechanically it felt so fresh and disorienting and fear conjured in a way that's unconventional. You know, these weren't like audio jump scares or horrifying things you're seeing, but it just really created a displeasure and a discomfort in a way that I thought was really evocative. And then as you go on, you like learn what the story is actually about. And it's still, I think, an interesting story to tell, an important story, a heartfelt story. Like I was moved by the writing in this game, and that's what ultimately put it on my list. But that's why I'm not, you know, I don't quite put this in the like sort of pantheon of all-timer narrative games. This is more of a, hey, I think they're doing some really cool things. I think it's well written. And yes, it is sort of biting the style of Florence, but I don't think that we need, I think sometimes we're overly analytical about games seemingly borrowing from other games when like we let it slide in a bunch of other, you know, I talk about platformers, right? Like they're pulling on so many elements of history. I think, yes, Florence is unique, but I don't think that means you can never do that kind of gameplay and have something new to say. And I think they also like did do different stuff with it. Like they're conjuring different emotions than what Florence is. So I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, it's just like, oh, Florence already did it, whatever. Like I think it's still worth seeing on its own merits. But yeah, curious how this landed for other people here who played it.
I, as someone who has a grandparent who passed away from like not the most similar circumstances because it was quick onset because of COVID, but it is a game that made me very emotional. It is a game that hit hard. I loved doing all of the side stuff. I loved like sneaking through the living room and matching up the footprints with the shadows and all of that. I think, and I know that there's a piece on Remap actually about this. The religion stuff, especially at the end, is what like took it from up here to just like down here for me. Mm-hmm. And like it felt like I wasn't prepared. I was not prepared to just like be hit with like was there like a psalm at the end of that game? I forget.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that the developer's Steam page says like works for his glory, you know, and it's like it's fine, whatever. I don't have anything against Christianity or people practicing religion, whatever. But I just wasn't prepared. Like I wish I knew going in to playing that game. I played it when
or if it was
came
weaved
out
a little bit more. Like I am always interested when games explore artists' relationship with faith and religion, but I found it like notable and interesting that the game does it at the end, but it almost feels like a twist as opposed to something that was woven in to the game early on, where you're going to understand that like part of what this person is exploring is what it means to confront death and to comfort others as they face some version of the end in relation to their faith. And it comes as almost like a post-credit stinger sort of thing.
Yeah,
opposed to like...
It was a surprise
hey,
for me.
Yeah, right. And I think it was designed as a surprise. I don't think there's any world in which you play this game and you get the sense that like, right, like this is a real mediation on like somebody's
you kind of get like the religious. I agree that I don't think it's like that well woven in, because it does feel like almost like a Christianity jump scare, which I know sounds really negative. I was raised Catholic, so I have some background there or whatever, but like same deal where it's like not really my. It's interesting in that this game, because it is so Christian, that it does kind of give like this is the narrative equivalent of a song that I really like, and it's like it turns out that was about Jesus. But I think what's different here is that they're like, by the way, it's about Jesus in a way where you're like, oh, I mean, like I didn't care, but now I feel a little like it hits a little funky. I do think there's some allusions to it, but like I wasn't surprised by there being like a Bible quote at the end, only because like 2/3 through they're like, you just gotta pray on it, or like there's a point where like someone's like annotating a Bible, so it's like I wouldn't say I saw that ending coming, but it did seem like at that point I'm like, okay, there's maybe like this religious layer here that, again, I don't think it was like that well weaved, but I wasn't surprised for that reason.
I think I had a relatively not intense reaction, but it immediately took that game from like feeling so meaningful to me to feeling like not so meaningful.
Well, you cease being able to relate to it, it seems like, right? Like it tells a very relatable story, whether you've had, and especially so if you've had personal experience with something in that ballpark, and then the injection of, and by the way, like let's talk about heaven. Like also, I can understand that feeling like a little bit like, oh, okay, thought I was on the same page with this game. It turns out now. Does that color everything that I experienced before, or do I feel like it colors everything that came before, and that makes me suspicious of everything that I saw before? And I can see how that can end up. It didn't for me, but I can understand. I can see the perspective of it tainting sort of the holistic experience.
There is a quote in the Remap article that Patrick put out back in October after you talked to the dev.
Yeah.
That says, expressing the religious aspect of myself is directly tied to my purpose for living. That's why I have such a strong desire to communicate this message. At the same time, I understand that simply expressing my beliefs as is won't necessarily resonate with everyone. So, which also made me feel like, okay, but they're trying to express it in a way that like they're making sure I'm seeing it. Even if they're not expressing it how they,
it's not subtle.
So it makes it kind of makes the story feel like an exercise in proselytizing rather than engaging with.
That's the word that I'm like forgot the word. Yes.
Yeah. Because for me, I haven't played the game. You know, people have different, like my family certainly, like Catholicism is all around my family, but like it skipped my entire generation. And so that is kind of like where I come from. But like, and so I'm very used to, and like a lot of stories that are sort of grounded in religion or questions of faith, but that is different than a story that is like proselytizing its faith a little bit, and that can it sounds like, and it, like that for you at least, Danika, I'm curious, like Jan, to what extent you felt this as well, but like your description of it's a song that you're kind of into, and then it's like, oh, and it's about Jesus. That is kind of record scratch moment. Like, it's not that certainly my like I'm okay with relating to works that are like profoundly religious. I'm less interested in works that are sort of confidently positing their religion as an answer to the dilemmas raised by like the work.
That's how it felt to me. Like I
guess
felt very different listening to Flyleaf when I was a teenager, than I did when I got to the end of this game. But
yeah, I guess my thought on it was just that if you chopped that part off of the game, the rest of it doesn't. Like, it doesn't. I understand the reaction. I don't feel that like the game is religious, like overtly religious coded in a way that is trying to accomplish that. Like, doesn't mean that they weren't intending to do that, but like I think part of the reason it's like a Christian jump scare is because it doesn't feel that, like, you don't feel that weight on the work as you're navigating through it. Which, and again, doesn't,
I agree. Yeah.
Hand wave away like how one might be suspicious about that after the fact, because I do think it's like a very blunt reveal at the end to like have a psalm like at the end, like, wait, what are we? And so I think it's very. It almost feels like the designer told this story in a very like honest way. Then like at the end was like, ooh, like I don't know if they got the point, and then like did something very blunt at the end that can then retroactively like leave the wrong or a different impression. But I think if you straight up chopped that part off of the game, and it's part of why the game did stick with me. It didn't make my list, but it did stick with me. Was I think the work itself, whether deeply influenced by faith or not, like stood as a very, interesting, thoughtful, and frankly, like refreshingly honest story about like, especially from the POV of the caretaker, of like, what does it mean to be there for someone? What are the mistakes you might make along the way? The portrayal of how one takes care of somebody in their final days, months, hours, years. You're just helping, like everything's great, and like you're doing your best. And like a lot of this story is like the profound moral like failings of like somebody that might experience over the course of that experience. And that stood for me. But I fully get, like, it's why I wrote that piece, and I wanted to ask them, was like, what's up, man? And basically like, they tell stories with like an inkling. I think they could have like had their cake and eat it too. And I'm not shocked that you had the reaction that you did and have trouble separating it. And I think that is the fault of the designer and the bluntness of how that's introduced at the end.
Yeah, it's interesting because Rob, it's funny that you're like, I actually haven't played it, but I agree with what you generally said, or the thing you brought up of there's works that are like about religion in like a core way, or that draw on religion, like, and religion's like one of the bedrocks of society a lot, right? Music comes from that, like so many things come from religion, like ultimately. So it's not like I'm looking to banish anything that ever mentions religion, and I think Danika, you seem like you feel the same way, but it's that it does feel very like ham-fisted. It almost kind of feels like the designer was like, I make games through a lens of Christianity because that's what matters to me, and this is all over like their website and their interviews that they've done. But it almost feels like for that reason, like like the way the game comes across is as if they made the game and then said, damn, I gotta add religion in here though. Okay, well, like, let's have them read the Bible once. Let's have them pray about this, and then at the end I'll put a verse, and that'll count towards like this being a Christian video game. And like, I don't think that it doesn't work well because it doesn't feel like an intentional exploration, you know? Like there were, and you know, obviously they want to write the game they want to write. I'm not pretending that I could like write it better, but it's just like I could see a world where, you know, the exploration is like faith being shaken or crying in like the church in a hospital or something like that. That would, I feel like, make more sense and feel more integrated and not feel preachy, because it would be like, oh, well, this character, I guess, you know, is religious, so they go to the church. Or also, that's also very relatable. Like people will go there just to see, I mean, the freaking kid at Home Alone goes into the church, you know what I mean? Like that has religion in it, but it doesn't feel like it's proselytizing. And I think this one does feel like it was done to check a box, and it does make it stand out in a negative way, because it is, besides the fact that obviously we all have our own like relationship towards religion in our personal lives, but it's also just like, oh, I guess this is like Christian now or whatever. And it's
it
like,
removes
right,
interpretation from the work. It's almost like, by the way, if you didn't pick up on it, it's like, well, I didn't, because actually I thought you told a pretty good story that didn't require this bluntness.
Yeah.
Towards the end.
Yeah, it is a weakness comment, like, so the interview you did, Patrick, and so what y'all are describing is like, and again, I grew up surrounded by a lot of this. Now, Catholicism was sort of what informed my background and like my family, but also I was coming of age in like peak evangelical Christianity, and so like I got at one point bait and switched into attending someone's Bible study.
Classic experience.
Trying to get you.
And it wasn't like a total nightmare or whatever, but you have to understand, like, this is like 16, 17-year-old kids. And the dude sort of leading the session, who like mega like youth pastor energy. But he's starting to talk about like the importance of like testifying, you know, to testifying to his faith. You know, and spreading that word and showing how God's light and love, it sort of informs his everyday. And even there, like 16, 17 years old, like I look at him and it's like, didn't say this, but I'm thinking, like, honestly, like, who the fuck are you to testify to me or anyone about your faith in the face of the world? You simply don't know enough. You haven't experienced enough. And also, like, it's not going to be a sufficient answer to a lot of, like, it's not going to be a sufficient answer to a lot of what people are going to encounter. Like, I think what you're talking about with and Roger is, it sounds like renders the experience, parts of the experience of going through something like this really, really well. But it would certainly be nice to go through an experience like that and be deeply convinced in your faith about what all this means and what is happening to the soul and the person in moments like that. Would love it. It is also very hard to go through that experience and believe in the existence of a loving and merciful God. It is hard to go through that experience and come away thinking that the experience is anything other than cruel and in many ways like degrading for everyone involved. And so when you just pull the rabbit out of the hat, it makes it even shallower, I think. Shallow in that way that I remember from the Bible study, which is just that, like, you're not, you haven't quite fully wrestled with it. Like, it's okay for you to come through this experience and explain like how it informs your faith or how you reconcile these things, but I'm not sure what you're describing doesn't necessarily sound like it fully does the work. And That isn't to say I need a better. The game needs to make a fully developed argument for the existence of God or the immortality of the soul or anything like that. But like, if you're putting this experience that a lot of people go through in dialogue with faith, you're gonna have to wrestle with the fact that a lot of people are going to come away from this that have gone through this without the benefit of that perspective to sort of operate as comfort, or the experience is like equally likely, if not more so, to shake sort of a faith that is complacent in some respect, and it makes that sort of pivot less satisfying. An example of like something that a work that I think is not religious but is deeply about faith, the Nick Cage movie Pig. Like, I think especially like the end of that film is entirely about the question of like, what are we doing here? Like, where do we go? What does this signify? What does loss signify? What does it mean? The film doesn't have, as far like, I do not think there's a biblical allusion. There's nothing like religious in the film per se, but it's entirely concerned with questions that are like deeply familiar to anyone who's sort of grown up in sort of a religious or intellectual tradition. The language is not hard to the visual language, the emotional language it's covering is not hard to interpret. And that is, I think, more to my taste, where it's like that is where I find these questions sort of compelling, much more so than the way you described, Janet, the gotta rack up some Bible stuff in here to make this experience representative of my faith. Chia, I think you are next.
Here's a question.
Yo.
Do I skip my 7 and go to my 6 in order to talk about something that is tangentially related to this conversation, or do we stick to the program?
6, 7.
Flip the order, baby. Yeah. There we go.
Here's the problem: if you say your number 6 and it's higher up, it breaks your entire
that is
going
funny.
To 6.
No, I know it's not. I know it's not, because this is the game that
because it's Chia's list.
Because people didn't like this game, and my number 6, I'm skipping ahead, is Consume Me.
Okay, that's okay. But this is perfect.
I read about that. This is another reason why I was like, I'm not playing Consume Me, because I read
that's very interesting.
That it big year for Christianity in games.
Does that. What's the word?
I was wondering it was about Bloom and Rage. I was so excited. It was like, and Bloom and Rage.
Wait, tell me.
I actually secretly played it, and actually I came out the other side.
I'm deeply religious now. I am.
Can you tell me what the word is again? Proselytizing?
Proselytize. Yeah.
Proselytizing.
Proselytize?
Proselytizing.
Yeah, no, I don't think it. This is the thing. I don't think it does that.
Oh, I think I threw a T in there, but
proselytize.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It's close enough. Consume Me is number 6 on your list?
Yes.
Oh.
Let's talk about Jesus. Let's get to it.
Well, no, but the thing that happens in the game.
Oh, it's about communion.
Wait.
Sorry,
what?
That's a bad joke.
Boo.
Consume me. Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah, that's right.
No, there's been a lot of time spent discussing the early parts of Consume Me, and where Janet and Patrick both hit a wall, and I ended up not hitting that wall. I did fail a day in the same. Was it the week after? It was the week after, but
was it during the
exam?
It doesn't matter, I guess. But
restart the day and do it from there. I didn't have to do the whole week or anything. But I did really end up loving that tension of actually feeling like it could all fall out from under Oh, excuse me.
You.
Me. Yeah, I'm sorry. I really did like the tension of it, feeling like it could all fall out from under me, because I think that's the right kind of tension that the narrative is going for. And it being so razor's edge every week, definitely, I don't know. It ended up hitting for me, and I got all the way through. Now, the religion moment in this game is very interesting because of where it ends up going. To me, there's a moment here where there's, and like the way that it felt to me, like being in the moment and having it hit, was like, oh, this is acting as the single release of tension that this person has in their life from all of the stacked stressors that otherwise are going on in their life, right? There's that moment, and I don't think after that any of it that continued, like it becomes the like ability to spend some time praying becomes part of the mechanics to release tension for the next little bit, and then in the epilogue it is shown disappearing after you hit like the sort of end state of the game. Religion kind of leaves the narrative, and they like talk to that, and you realize that it the way that it's kind of presented in the game, it's very much like there was no other way for this person in their life, because it's autobiographical, to get this type of release from those stressors, unless somebody else was telling them, and this is the way it arrived to them. And the fact that once they had this like mental, this like break where the stressors, like they had to look at the stressors in their life differently, and religion didn't end up returning, showed that it ended up being this release valve that was temporary, but not like, it's not like the reason it's like it comes in really fast and doesn't seem like it's related to the rest of the game, but then it kind of almost just as quickly leaves the narrative, felt like, oh, I see how this worked in this person's life. And it doesn't feel like they were trying to say something about specifically religion, and like it's like trying to proselytize in that way, where like you felt kind of like, I gotcha, this has actually all been like a thing setting you up to then like join me, because then it leaves the creator's life as well, and you see it as like, oh, this was a temporary band-aid to something that this person wasn't able to find a different route out of. And like, I don't know, like I think there's a lot of things that like really, really hit close to home, which probably helped Consume Me's case in my estimation. I have I understand the specific type of parental sort of comments that this person was getting. I'm like, oh yeah, that's my mom. Oh shit. And like, it's wild too, because like, you know, I was on the other side of the whole like gender thing with when I was small, but like for some reason my mom still did these things in that way. I was like, damn, I got that shit. Even though people say it's very gendered, in my family it wasn't. Like it was like a kind of across the board for us, and so like a lot of this like really hit close to home, and I think like I really enjoyed, because I mean the type of game that it is, this like sort of min-maxy, like edge of your teeth, scrape by on like the purest, like the minimum. Like there were times where I was like, okay, I can waste all of my happiness, convert that to energy, then spend that energy rebuilding happiness with this bonus over here. Like all sorts of weird, like wacky, like shit that is very gamified, but also feels like the sort of thoughts of a person in a manic episode of just like, what can how can I squeeze more out of this, like obviously way too overbooked schedule, right? Like that sort of like finding, like min-maxing your life in that way is like a thing that like this was me going into college, because I needed to fucking get a scholarship, or else I wasn't going to college. Like my family could not afford it, so like it was stress coming from a different direction than this creator, but like the amount of stress and the sort of like ways that all the other stressors of life, like it felt like it was like, damn shit, that's right. I remember going through that shit. That shit sucked. So it was just like, yeah, I mean, it was great for me. I really, really enjoyed it. And like, I'm really sad that when y'all hit that wall, it fell from your good graces, because I
Specifically,
think it's a very
two
special
walls.
game. Yeah,
Because I did get through that first wall, and I like I said, I do like the tension of it and that it matters, but the chapter after you do your like high school stuff, like you get you're applying to college.
Yeah.
That next chapter is really, really hard because it's like mom's not giving you money for chores anymore, so you have less levers to pull on.
Yeah,
and there is a point in there where you like have to fail, like narratively, like that's the way the story goes. And I'm like, well, if I was gonna have to fail, why didn't you just let me?
I don't think
fail where I failed. Did you never fail?
I didn't fail, but the character gets depressed and then doesn't do anything, right?
That's what I mean. It's like
That's what I mean.
like it's over.
It's
like you kind of
different
get taken out of the
But
situation.
it's because she stops giving effort, right? Like you don't fail like as the player doing the mechanics wrong, and then it's like, oh, you're supposed to fail in this part. You can't do the mechanics anymore, right? Like that's the thing that worked for me. It wasn't that it was like it's like a built-in failure state. It is we've taken away the controls because your player character is now depressed and is not doing anything. You're not getting out of bed. You're not interacting with the mechanics, and thus you fail your last test or whatever. But it's like basically the second that the break hits, which is like a rough breakup with your long distance boyfriend, you lose control as a player, right? Like you are not actually interacting with the game mechanics anymore at that point, and then like technically that second the second goal of that week does not matter. So it, to me, that's how that played. It was like less like, because some games do that thing where it's like they still give you control so that you but it's like a forced fail state where it's like no matter how hard you try, you will end up losing at this point. This was more like, we're not even going to let you try because your character is now depressed. They are not doing anything. Yeah, but
the ball gets taken away from you, basically.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, if it's, then just let me just, I was right there. It's like, I just find it silly to have to redo a thing where it's done anyway. You know what I mean? I'm like, we're already, like, yeah, because you have to get to that week.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
but it's
and
like
I just
because
couldn't
your
get there.
character is still in the mindset of it being important to do all these things, right? Like I think the narrative is what works for me here, and that the reason that when I failed it the first time, I redid it, found my like thread of the needle, and was like, okay, that still works for me. But yeah,
I was too broke. Yeah, I was like, you know what?
Yeah, no, I had like no fucking money. I skated by on willpower. It was bad.
I was like, we got nothing going for us. we gotta just throw the whole game away.
Well, the really sad thing is that they end up, the only way to make money in that last chapter is to sell your old clothes. So you end up having to give up part of your history. Clothes that you recently like acquired too, and
clothes that have mechanical like buffs to them.
100%.
So I'm like, I'm poor. I can't be happy wearing my jumper anymore.
Right, exactly. But it was exactly, it was exactly that line of like, I know I have to sell X amount of clothes, so I have X amount of food, otherwise I die out from food. But I need at least one of these buffs, so I can't sell that thing. And that part of it, like, that's also like, that's just fucking Chia food, right? Like this like min-max, like find the perfect line through this horrible hellscape. That's I eat that shit up. So
no, I'm doing that in my real life now. You know, I got that Rincon app. I have a life score. I said I'm still playing Consume Me, even though I stopped. You know what I mean? Like,
right? No, absolutely.
The neuroticism never ends. So I just really I didn't like how they handled difficulty, because it is that's dynamic difficulty based on how you play, which isn't to say that you could have still had a harder gameplay session than me. I have no idea, but it's just like I think it was a little too much for me to want to see it through on my own, even though I did fight so hard to get through that to get into college. I like ran that thing like 3 or 4 times, and I did still find it like kind of fun, even though I do think that my other beef is that there's parts that feel like it's that classic game thing of because there's options you can take on who you're getting your rec letters from, and some are easier than others depending on what your stats are in the game.
Right.
So it did kind of feel like I'm sure there are people that played it and, they never they just go straight through. But it's like, oh, if I knew what to do, maybe you know what I mean? Like, it was one of those, like, I had to fail to learn because I spent time talking to people to learn all the options. So things like that I didn't really, like, vibe with. It had to let go and watch the rest on YouTube. I think the religious aspect also works generally and works better in Consume Me because it fits the tone of the rest of the game, because the way you pray is you text Jesus.
Yeah.
Which is like hilarious. You like text Jesus and be like,
you straight.
No.
So you get a fucking scripture quote in return, and then you have another question. It's like, wait, but does that mean X? And then he's just like, winky face.
Well, but
Yeah,
also
we're
very
like-
funny.
the difference in and Roger, it feels like the developer talking to you, like, by the
Right.
way,
By the
Yeah.
way,
here's
hey.
the religious part of this game,
Right.
as opposed to in Consume Me, which I didn't get to this point, but like it feels much more like it's the character having a natural, organic
Yes.
interaction in the story, which feels less, preachy, but again, like speaks to it's more organically interwoven into the storytelling,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, by the way, like here's a stinger.
Right.
The Jesus
No,
song
absolutely.
kind of hit too.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Right?
Like,
I was kind of like, I just relaxed.
this is relaxing.
Maybe
Like,
Jesus
it was a
is
beautiful
onto
moment. I
something.
could feel that. I could like empathize with the moment, even if I don't agree with its source. But like,
Yeah.
I think if the game then becomes like, this is the way you fix these issues, then I would have a different take here. But it's not. It is like, this was the release for this person in their story,
Yeah.
and then it kind of like leaves it at that, and then they end up moving on from it.
Yeah, if you've never been like, wouldn't life be a little easier if I believed in something? You have not been to a dark enough place. And maybe that's
Right,
that's a sad
right.
share, but I
Yeah.
found that to be really, really legit. Yeah, and then there is also the direct, discussion from the, like, it does have like kind of a fourth wall breaky epilogue that
Yes.
where the
yes.
developer speaks a little more directly to why they kind of fell out of favor with their relationship with religion as well. That just kind of, yeah, like it still hit a little weird for me. And again, I think I'm totally willing to say that's just my anti-religious bias from being raised religious.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, I don't think it's as much of a negative ding
Yeah.
as it is on Anne Roger in terms of game fluidity.
Right. Totally. No, I definitely had the same sort of like reaction
Yeah, I
when
was
it
like,
happened. I
I'm
was like,
scared.
"Oh, where are we going with this? But I was like so enamored with the rest of the game up to that point that I was like willing to see it through, and I'm totally happy with where it ended up. Like, it felt good. It felt right. It didn't end up like shifting the whole thing in a weird way.
I think there are times too where doesn't Jesus, I'm trying to scrub through like someone's Let's Play, where sometimes Jesus will text back and be like, here are your lucky numbers for the day. Did I, like,
Yeah, yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
It's so funny. It's very funny. Like, yeah, the whole thing is like,
Pretty good.
it's a hilarious game. It's so well like it takes this thing that I don't think anyone would ascribe narrative to, right? The sort of like the WarioWare minigames, sort of like fast, frenetic, like we're moving to the next thing, we're moving to the next thing, we're moving to the next thing, style of doling out these different like sections of the game that and like weaves that with a narrative that like integrates that freneticness into like how this person is feeling. Like I think it's just really well done. I really enjoyed it. So that was my number 6.
Number 6.
But we're still on
skip that.
7.
I'll go back to my 7 next time we come around, or how do we want to do it? Because I just it was
Think
like
to your 7 now.
it was too perfect to
No,
talk about it
yeah,
with the religion.
In